detail. And I still have so much to learn, but it has been very interesting to see your watershed and the other watersheds at work. You do a lot of good work. So.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start our meeting. Mic's on. Make sure to speak into the mic. Okay, we can go ahead and call our meeting to order. Just dropped it. Okay, so let's go roll call. Go individual. Steve Wageman.
Here.
Mike Bradley.
Here.
Wynant. Here. Waller.
Here.
And Kreiner here. Next thing we'll do is set the agenda. Anybody like to change, add, or do anything different to the agenda today?
President Preiner, staff have no changes.
Is there anything that we can move up for the commissioner so that, or just should we deal with it during open forum as far as an update?
I think open forum would
It's
be
fine?
fine.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
President, your roll call.
We have to do that roll call all the way around?
All right, thank you.
Okay, that'll be a roll call. Steve Wageman,
Here. Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes.
Manager
Yes.
Wynant, and Manager Preiner, yes. Okay, so it's all roll call today then. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the August 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers.
Madam President, I'll second that, but I have some corrections in discussion part.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Yes, Madam President, I turn to page 11 of the packet, and around line 274, 275. This is a discussion I had about my research for the history of Privy Lake and investigating the Birchwood City Hall minutes. And I believe I spoke for around 12 minutes, and there's about 100 words that's provided here. And I would like to see some more detail to provide substance to the presentation, because there's no mention of the special meetings that were held in 8/21/78 or 8/31/78, no mention of the lawsuit that was involved, or the controversy between the district board and the city of Birchwood. There's no mention of President Goyer at the time attending those meetings, those special meetings, or Hamilton, or what they said, which I quoted from the minutes of the meeting. So I'd like something to go back there and take a look and put some substance into the presentation. I realize these don't have to, minutes of the meeting are not going to be a transcript, but nevertheless, you should have an idea of what the talk is about when it's more detailed than in the presentation for that time.
Okay. Anything else on that, John?
No, I just think that they ought to review that and bring it back. Those particular items I did talk about here in my notes, and like I said, Goyer used such terms as kick this around, and that it isn't just my belief that it was a commitment by the district. Goyer said that the Rice Creek Watershed District will be responsible for maintaining Hall Marsh and part of the project since it is a Rice Creek project. And Hamilton, later on in that meeting of 8/31, he pointed out that Hall Marsh route provided superior stormwater treatment facilities. And that phrase, stormwater treatment facilities, yesterday, of course, we listened to that in our report in the workshop from the staff provided. So I think providing a history it gives you more complete context of what was going on about the controversy.
Okay.
Perhaps Manager Waller, with some help of staff, would like to summarize that and then attach it as a note to the minutes. It seems like that's a lot of detail to have within minutes.
Well, I think that I did summarize it. I don't think I've taken 12 minutes to talk about it today.
Okay. Nick, go ahead.
can appreciate the addition Manager Waller is noting. In the absence of specific language, and we have a motion and a second, I think staff can certainly go back, and I believe this, and I look to Louis, probably be tabled until the next meeting when we can review the language or consider the update.
Should we just withdraw the motion then? Or what's the best?
Madam
way?
President, a motion to table the minutes would be in order. And
Well, I'll
with
make
those
the motion
instructions.
to table the minutes to the next meeting.
Second. Manager Wagaman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. Manager Waller?
Yes?
Manager Winan?
No,
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Okay. Next one was August 21st, public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move the approval of the minutes of the August 25th, 2021 public hearing on the repair of the main channel of Anoka County Ditch 5232 and the Water Management District.
Madam President, I'll second that, and again, for discussion purposes. So in this case, I'd like to turn to page 17, and line 167, it says, Manager Waller thanked everyone for coming to the meeting. That's correct, that was my first sentence. But then I went on, and there's no record of this, to point out that 3 or 4 of the landowners that came to speak had complained about the inadequate maintenance program by the district. And the district, I pointed out, had developed a regulatory employment, but hasn't really developed a department for maintenance. And I think that's important to be added. It's missing here from the
Okay,
minutes of the meeting.
any further discussion on that? Nick?
President Priner, I'll note for an addition to the meeting, to identify the location of it. The meeting was held at Circle Pines City Hall, so we could put that right at the, right after the date at line 1. Circle Pines City Hall, Circle Pines, Minnesota. To Manager Waller, perhaps if he repeated that again, Teresa could capture it, and you could go to
Go to vote.
approve the minutes based on his statement.
Okay,
Teresa, did you capture what I had to say, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you repeat it for the
All right.
rest of the board?
Well, I said,
I was suggesting Teresa
do it?
do it, and
Sure,
then you can
yeah.
confirm.
that's fine.
Well, I was gonna check the audio.
the audio to,
to make sure.
okay.
So in that case,
Capture what he was saying.
what I'm saying is that,
3 and 4 landowners
yes, that
that were
I agreed with them, the 3 or 4 landowners that complained about the inadequate maintenance program. I pointed out that, you know, the district has developed the regulatory side of the world with its employment, but we only had Ashley there, you know, was they pointed out, was that we only have one. We should, and a need for us to develop greater maintenance emphasis. So that's basically what I said. You go back to the tape and look at it,
Okay,
and I'd agree to that statement, you know, being inserted
do you
there.
want to just table it, or should we just accept John's statement and move on this one?
So at line 167, I'll give it a shot. Manager Waller thanked everyone for coming out to the meeting. He stated 3 to 4 of the individuals commented inadequate maintenance on the system, that the district had developed its regulatory program, but there was additional need to develop the public drainage program.
Yeah, the maintenance program.
Public drainage maintenance program.
Okay, do we have let's see, we have a motion and a second. Do we want to just add that language in and move on?
I'd
you-
accept that as a friendly amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Manager Wagman?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Winan?
Yes,
And Manager Priner, yes. Okay, we will add that in. Oh, okay. All right, so now we need to approve the minutes with that included. So we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? This is to approve the minutes with corrections. Any further comments on it? Okay, we'll call the vote. Manager Wageman,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Wynant,
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes. Okay, consent agenda. Any comments, questions on the consent agenda today?
President Priner, I will just note that there is one application on the consent agenda and then a further application down the page that will require separate action.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the application? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move to Cap Rock permit number 21-074.
In accordance with the engineer's findings and recommendations dated August 31, 2021.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
I'll
Yes,
second that.
I accept
We have
that.
a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll call the vote. Manager Wageman,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Wynant,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, next thing we have is the water quality grant. And that's also part of the consent agenda. Any questions on it? Lauren, would you like to give us a quick review?
Morning, President Priner, Board of Managers. For your consideration today is Water Quality Grant Application A2101 that is on the consent agenda and starts on page 28 in your packets. The CAC did consider this application at the September 1st meeting and recommended a grant award of $10,000 instead of the $7,500 for an individual cap due to the high pollutant reduction benefits, prevention of erosive impact to the home, and it is part of the Upper Mississippi River Bacteria Team Meal.
Madam President, I would move the approval of the water quality grant cost share application 21-01, not to exceed 50% and up to $10,000.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? No further discussion? We'll call the vote. Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Wynant,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wageman,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
President Priner,
Yes.
I would like to suggest that you move to open mic and then do the variance. The variance might take quite a bit of time.
And that way we can accommodate the commissioner.
Commissioner Karlowski, if he would like to make any comments now, and we could discuss. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry, Patrick. Okay, we're going to move to open mic. Is anybody here like to speak to open mic?
Yeah, Commissioner Stan Karwoski, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, all. And first of all, I really appreciate all your skill and everything you do to manage water and the quality. I represent the city of Birchwood, one of several cities I represent. And there's one of my constituents, the Jensens, who have brought something to your attention regarding the Halls Marsh and the quality of their water. I have seen this marsh, and it can look quite attractive. Tried to do a lot of research, and I know it looks like it's something you're digging into, and I know Mr. Waller has brought up some history, and what I'd really like you to do is commit to looking at it in further detail to see if it's something you're responsible for, and then if so, pursue a plan for corrective action or a study address the entire system. It sounds like there's quite a distance from the Preby Lake outfall pipe down to the Halls Marsh outlet. A lot of territory, a lot of things that could happen. So I think it would be best to look at the entire system. So in short, if you could check into it, and if it's something there's history and there's a responsibility of the Watershed District, then I'd like you to look at the entire system. And I don't know if you can comment at open mic, otherwise you kind of know where I stand. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for being here. We can comment, we did have a discussion yesterday at our workshop. Nick, I think you can just bring it up to date for the Commissioner.
Sure. President Priner, Board of Managers, Commissioner Kowalski. Yes, the district at its workshop yesterday did discuss the Johnson Communications as well as its project for Preview Lake Outlet. We have begun communications with the DNR in regards to the permit the district holds for that facility on the landscape to recognize the responsibility that the district might have there, and directed our engineer to investigate the sediment that might be entering Hall's Marsh there. The district does have a number of programs that it's instituted and will continue to do so for water quality work, specifically noting Preview Lake, but of course those waters do go down to Hall's Marsh. And in that way, it will hopefully improve the quality of the water at the marsh itself. Certainly, we work at the watershed scale, and your statement of the whole system is recognized and noted as an important way to go about our work.
Any questions, Commissioner?
Thank you for the update. It sounds like, and maybe you can paraphrase, it sounds like you are looking into it. You'll validate some direction. You'll update the Jensens, and then if there's a commitment and obligation, you'll probably create a plan. I'm not expecting a timetable. I know you have a lot on your agenda, but if it deems to be your watershed's responsibility, and if it deems to be high priority or a priority, hopefully you would then ultimately pick a time frame that can be managed and is not too unreasonable for the Jensens. That sound reasonable?
That's reasonable. Yeah, we are continuing, and we will keep you updated on that also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I won't sit on the rest of your meeting here, but again, I appreciate everything the entire board does.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you, you
You
too.
do the same.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Okay, we're still on open mic. Does anybody else like to speak to open mic? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go back to Patrick here on the permit application.
President Priner, Board of Managers, the next item here is permit application 21-032, which also has a variance request. This is for the project known as the Blaine Back 40. While I pull this up, maybe Chris could run through the project summary, and then we will evaluate the criteria for the variance.
Madam President, Board of Managers, so the applicant for the Blaine Back 40 has submitted a written request for variance from Rice Creek Watershed District Rule F5B1. This rule states where the wetland alteration is proposed in the context of land subdivision, on-site replacement, wetland and buffer areas, as well as buffers established under Section 6E, must be located within the platted outlot. And to evaluate this request, we, as we normally do, review a number of different items, and I'll walk these through in a bit here. Regarding the project itself, the project proposes to construct 2 new commercial buildings and extend the street that's servicing it, Flanders Street Northeast, to serve those proposed buildings, and expand 2 buildings on the south side of the parcel, which is a little over 46 acres. The application proposes to add a little over 6 acres of impervious surface area and disturb a little over 13 acres overall. Runoff from the site drains to a wetland north of the site and then over to Anoka County Ditch 5362 Branch 5 Lateral 2 before draining east and ultimately into Golden Lake, which is the resource of concern. The project proposes meeting the stormwater requirements of Rule C through the use of 6 NERP ponds, which provide the water quality treatment and the rate control for runoff from these proposed buildings, parking areas, and the road extension of Flanders Avenue. The proposed site development is located within both the Village Meadows and ACD 5362 Comprehensive Wetland Protection Management Plan areas. And it requires a wetland replacement plan, including the establishment of a vegetated buffer area. The applicant is proposing a wetland buffer that satisfies the 50-foot average and 25-foot buffer requirement at all points of inflow per Rule F6E2. However, the applicant is requesting a variance from the requirement that the entire buffer be placed in an outlot as required under Rule F5B1. The intent of this rule is to favor establishment of a land use restriction that is in the form of wetland buffer on outlots where easements and other restrictions exist parcel-wide, rather than on individually owned lots where the existence and location of the restriction may be less clear to the landowner.
Thanks, Chris. And so I do have a figure here for folks to see it. These are the buildings down here that are expanding. A new building over here, another one here, and then this is the road extension. So we can jump into the evaluation of the criteria. Criterion A, how substantial the variation is in relation to district rule requirements.
The applicant has not provided the entire buffer within a platted outlot and is proposing the buffer within individually owned lots. The proposed wetland buffer map submitted shows the location of the proposed buffer within each of the lots on the site. Other than Rule 5FB1, applicant will meet the remaining portion of provisions of the district rules, including the buffer requirement.
Criterion B, the effect the variance would have on government services.
Issuance of a variance for the back 40 of Blaine is not expected to increase flooding or have any negative effect on government services.
Criterion C, whether the variance will affect a substantial change in the character of the watershed resources or will be a substantial detriment to neighboring properties.
As we do with these type of variances, the district engineer uses 3 criteria to assess the substantial change, whether the change is substantial. First of all is the water quality, defined as the quantity of pollutants such as phosphorus and suspended sediment leaving the site and potential for degrading water quality downstream. Second criteria would be the presence and potential impact to special and impaired water bodies as defined by various laws, including the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's stormwater program. Whether the water body is impaired and related designations, including wild or scenic or outstanding natural resource value designations. And the third criteria is flooding, the potential for flood damages or other adverse hydrologic impacts. And we have a number of different criteria that we look at in assessing whether that the water quality effect is there or the presence of the potential impact to special areas. I'll note that Golden Lake, which receives the project drainage, is listed in the Section 303D impaired waters list. The listed impairments for the lake are mercury in fish tissues and nutrients. The project as a whole is not expected to cause adverse impacts. The site has been designed to route the majority of the stormwater runoff to 6 proposed NERP ponds via curb, gutter, and storm sewer to mitigate the effect of the lack of buffer by removing nutrients prior to entering the wetlands. Discharge from the ponds is controlled by outlet control structures, and discharge points for the proposed ponds are upland from the wetland and protected by riprap to provide energy dissipation. The applicants identified 3 wetlands on site, one that is non-degraded, one that's marginally degraded, and one that is severely degraded. There are no scientific or natural areas within or near the project area. It's not likely that the resources identified will negatively affect by locating the buffer in the private lots. And whether the variance has a negative effect on neighboring properties, we consider whether the granting the variance will cause or contribute to a change in 100-year flood elevation, either upstream or downstream, whether it will increase the frequency or magnitude of flood damages to adjacent properties, and whether it will increase the hardship downstream from peak flow and flood duration. The proposed variance is for the buffer requirements, which have minimal effect on flood elevations. The applicant has complied with Rule C or stormwater requirements for both peak rate and water quality. The proposed variance from locating the buffer within the outlot will have a minimal effect on adjacent wetland resources. The affected wetlands are large, and the buffer will meet the 50-foot average footprint, and thus it does not appear there will be an effect on the wetland resource. Overall, the project is affecting a net decrease in wetland resource and habitat area via the placement of 16,130 square feet of wetland fill. The applicant proposes purchasing wetland bank credits equal to 0.85 acres in compliance with the district rules. And one of the concerns with granting the variance is the viability of long-term protection of that buffer. Placing the buffer in a platted outlot provides greater clarity as to extent of the land use restriction, which may make it less likely to be disturbed by property owners. The applicant has addressed this concern by stating that the proposed development is commercial and not residential. Therefore, future owners will likely have little incentive to do land disturbing activities that encroach on the buffer area. The new impervious surface areas will be curbed to route stormwater to the on-site BMPs, and buffer signage is required adjacent to the curb. Due to these factors, no additional requirements on the permit are necessary to replicate the protections which otherwise would be provided by compliance with Rule F5B1.
Criterion D, whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated by a feasible method other than a variance.
The applicant has indicated that relocating the lot lines outside of the wetland buffer would not meet the City of Blaine's setback requirements from pavement areas, and thus the applicant would not be able to extend Flanders Street as required by the project. Alternatively, the outlot requirement could be met by establishing the lot lines at the setback distance from the pavement and then placing additional wetland fill to create buffers within these outlots. However, this would not be allowed under the Wetland Conservation Act.
Criterion E, how the practical difficulty occurred, including whether the landowner created the need for the variance.
Per the guidance of District Council, this criterion considers whether the landowner or the landowner's predecessor in title engaged in an act independent of the proposed development that changed the physical or legal circumstances of the property so as to cause or contribute to the practical difficulty that changed the physical or legal circumstances of the property so as to cause or contribute to the practical difficulty that the landowner now faces. The district engineer finds that the current landowner or its predecessor did not engage in such action. The practical difficulty is created by the pre-existing configuration of the property, the extent of the wetland presence on the property, and the city's lot dimension and road alignment requirements. These factors, in conjunction with the district's buffer requirements stated in Rule F5B, prohibit the planned development on the site from being feasible. The proposed road extension has been sited on an upland portion of the site, but is surrounded by both sides by wetlands that require buffers. The applicant indicates that due to the city's lot setback requirements, there is no feasible way to provide the buffers in an outlot and construct the road which is necessary for access to the proposed project.
And finally, criterion F, whether in light of all the above factors, allowing the variance will serve the interests of justice.
As always, this criterion lies largely in the board's domain as it involves judgments of a non-technical nature. Our criteria for assessing this portion of the practical difficulty standard is the ability or inability of other permit applications with similar site conditions to comply with the district's buffer requirements under Rule F5B1. Other applicants have had the ability to feasibly meet these requirements on site because of the orientation of necessary project features or due to less restrictive municipal setback requirements.
Okay,
At that point, we'll open it up to see if the board has any questions.
any questions from the board? Have they, yeah, I do have a good, have they asked the city about changing their setback a little bit, giving them a variance instead of us?
Not that I'm
Not that you're
aware of, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, any other questions for Patrick? Any comments? Well, let's go to the action then on the variance request. We'll need a motion, please.
Madam President, I move to approve the variance request for variance application 21-032 as outlined in accordance with Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers Variance Technical Memorandum dated September 1, 2021.
Second?
Manager Wagaman, second.
Oh, there you go. Wait.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a technical, so we are approving the variance, at which, once that's approved, then the permit can be
Right, we have to have the variance first. Anything else? We have a motion and second. Comments, questions? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Manager Wagaman,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Wynan,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, anybody have any questions on the application itself?
Well, it's okay as written, page 46, under the very beginning, Rule C, stormwater, starts out, applicant must ensure the wooden weirs, the sides must be designed, and then finally, additionally, for pool pond 6, flow, I would say it must be above the hydrocad, just to keep it in context with the other two sentences.
Okay. Any other comments?
So, let me catch up here, President Priner.
Sure.
Yeah.
I got, would you do that again, Mike? I missed
Certainly.
number 3 is what I'm missing.
It's page 46 of the packet.
Yeah,
It's the very first
yep.
condition under Rule C, Stormwater 1.
Must,
It starts off with applicant must ensure that the wooden weirs for pond 6 and 7 are consistent with hydrocad model. Sides must be designed so all flow will go over the front plate. Additionally, for pond 6, flow is above the hydrocad defined crest height. I'm assuming it's, additionally for pond 6, flow must be above. the
must be,
hydrocad.
okay, that's where it is.
Okay.
Manager Wagaman, you had comment?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, we have motion and second. Any further discussion? We'll call for a vote. Manager Wagaman?
I don't think.
Yes.
Wait,
Did I-
wait,
did I-
have a
I thought we
motion
did
permit.
We haven't
before.
moved it yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize. Go ahead.
Good point.
Madam President, I move to approve permit 21-032 as outlined in the Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers findings and recommendations dated September 1, 2021,
With correction.
with a minor correction I've
I
suggested.
second it with correction.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? We'll call the vote. Manager Wagaman,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Wynan,
Yes.
and Manager Bradley.
Yes,
And Manager Priner, yes, motion passes. Okay.
Madam Chair, I just say it's interesting to see all this out the window of the Rice Creek office. I don't know if you've driven by the, is it 109th Street?
109th, yeah.
109th, yeah.
It looks like it just keeps coming.
It's gonna keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next thing is items requiring board action. Patrick?
Yeah, figured I'd just stay back up here. This next item is on permit cost. I know we've had some discussions on this recently. So with the current permit fee schedule, revenue collected from private permit application fees falls short of RCWD expenses for permit review. RCWD is looking to revisit the permit application fee structure to ensure that private applicants bear a reasonable cost of review for the project instead of placing the burden on the overall public. A task order has been prepared for board consideration to engage with Houston Engineering on investigation of private permit costs and evaluate alternative ways to collect application fees that will improve equity in the cost to review for compliance with the regulatory rules. As part of the task order, HEI will review historic annual permit and compliance review costs and fees, calculate the revenue generation needed to meet current permit costs, and conceptualize a new approach for the fee assignment. So attached to this memo is the HEI task order with an estimated cost of $15,714 for the execution of the tasks identified. Staff has reviewed the task order and finds it in compliance with the work required to evaluate private permit cost. So at this time, staff is recommending that the Board of Managers approve the task order for the work.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'd move approval of the Houston Engineering scope of services with a total budget of up to $15,700 as defined in task order 2021-013 dated August 13th, 2021, authorizing the board president to execute the document.
Is it August 31st or 13th?
What did I say? And I didn't have my microphone on, did I? August 31st, 2021. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought,
okay.
I don't know.
okay, we have a motion,
I'll second that.
and we have a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I don't know that we've ever had a discussion about what is the proper balance between individual responsibility for permits and sharing in that because of the benefit to the public that results from those permits. So while I have no problem with us finding this information out, I do want to have us think about that there's more benefit from a permit than allowing someone to go ahead and do a job, that the public and neighbors are also benefited by our permitting work.
Okay,
Madam President, I had a comment too when
go ahead.
time is right.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thank you. I was looking at it and I think it's well-written and I like the concept. My one question was, this whole thing is kind of based, when I look at it, on two things, that these are two assumptions that completely change the way it's going to come out. And that's the legal counsel costs and the district engineer costs. And I'm just wondering how we never, I mean, that's kind of a risk reward type thing where I don't know how are we drawing the line on what goes to legal counsel or what our people are responsible for, and the same on the engineering. I think the question is what amount of risk the board is willing to accept, or the district. And I'm just wondering what we're doing on that, or if we should be talking about that ahead of time and looking at the risk and making a decision, or have you got something in this that is kind of taking that into account?
Okay. Staff? Go ahead.
President Preiner, to Manager Bradley, certainly we can look at the benefits to the public that go beyond just the simple building of it and how we generally protect the resources. To Manager Wegman's comment, I'll note that there is a triage on the front end in the, I'll say the simpler or elementary permit applications are reviewed by staff, and they don't necessarily go to engineer or legal. Those are just borne generally by the public. We call those affectionately the mom and pop type of applications. Beyond that, there is a good framework in place in staff to move things through and to know, Steve, to be, Manager Wegman, to know when they should be engaging legal or further with the engineer. I think that begins to answer some of what you're asking about. Certainly the level of risk I'm hearing you bring up is a judgment call, but staff do make some assessment of what is reasonable. And certainly we take your comments back and continually refine that position. Maybe you'd like to hear from council on that as well.
Wait, Steve still had a question. Did you have a question?
Yeah, for Nick, if I could, just to follow up on that a little bit, how do you assess that when you're sending, say for the attorney, if it's going to go to the attorney, what criteria are you using? Is it only when it's something that your people don't understand? And I mean, is it a special case, or is it we're sending ones that we think are correct, but we want confirmation of that? I'm kind of bungling this,
Yeah.
but what I'm getting at is it's a matter of decision what goes to them, and that's what I was just trying to get at, how we are coming up with that. I know you have a criteria for it, but
President
I'm not
Pliner?
sure what it is and how we get there.
Okay. Nick?
President Preiner, Manager Wagaman, it would be more the former in your statement. The district has, and maybe it's best to give a couple examples. So we have templates for maintenance obligations that are to be recorded by the applicant. Oftentimes, the applicant and their attorney would ask for some deviations or provide alternative language they'd like considered. Since we're not attorneys on your staff, we would consult with your attorney for that. Similarly with the engineer, we don't have an engineer on staff, and we're reviewing documents, that are developed by engineers. Certainly we can deal with the simplistic equations and such, but otherwise we defer to the engineer to guide us through those. So complicated models that the engineer should review and check for errors and such. Those
Okay,
are
and
the
I
ones
just
that
wanna-
go. Yeah.
Oops. I just wanted to make sure, I'm not questioning the staff's,
It's,
I'm sure they're doing it properly. It's just a matter of whether we had, as a board, looked at it as far as what risk was involved and what we were willing to accept or not accept, or that was the
think
only
that'll
part that
come
I
when
was
we do the-
questioning. So I think you've answered my question. The only other thing is, what percentage of the permits do you think, can you give me a guesstimate? What percent of permits end up going to the engineers and the attorneys?
President Brenner, Manager Wagaman, my gut would be that 75% probably go to the engineer and attorney, and 25% are in-house. You'll recognize you're often, as well as all of the managers are, given an email alert when an administrative decision is going to be made. Otherwise, these do require board action. So all those administrative ones are well vetted in-house for the most part, and everything that's on the agenda that requires the board action. It hasn't been delegated to staff, are done by the board. So I think it's a good question. The district and the managers here, and your point is well taken, that we be good stewards of the public's money and not just send everything out the door.
Right.
The second aspect of it, I would say, is, time of year, the volume that comes in the door. Having contracted for services allows for some expansion without hiring additional staff, for some critical time period. But I think,
Okay.
I heard President Priner note, and perhaps Manager Waller, this will likely come up in the detail that we pull from this. So it's an examination of current practice, and then how might we improve it?
Yep.
Currently, I'll just, again, this is just a gut, one of these applications may have, let's say, $15,000 in engineering and legal review. But the applicant is only paying maybe $5,000. That's
That's
quite
my
a disparity.
concern is,
Yep, and that's why
yeah.
the board has given us this general direction, and this will examine that further. I think both council and your engineer would like to speak to it, President Priner.
Go ahead.
thank
Chris.
you.
Madam President, I just wanted to note that, the reviews that we make and that legal counsel makes does affect change on how the plans are, for each application, are done in order to meet compliance with the district rules. For the most part, when we review it, we find things that need to be changed to meet the compliance. So there's, and just want to make sure, it's understood that there's value to that. But also it's important to note that the completeness of the permits or the applications may also be linked to potentially the incentive to have a complete one and have less review time. And certainly I would, it's our anticipation that if we go through with this change and we have that permit cost actually tied, or the fees tied to the review costs, that applicants are going to start connecting the dots between their level of completeness and what they provide and how much it's going to end up costing them in the long run. And I think that it probably will result in more pre-application meetings, which we would be proposing to continue to be free for the applicant. Those pre-application meetings would get them off on the right foot. I think all the way around it's going to end up in less cost all the way around for the reviews that take place.
Excellent. I agree. Mr. Smith?
Madam President, just a few quick comments. I just do think it's helpful for the board to know that the staff, the engineer, and the attorneys on a pretty regular basis review this process and have protocols in place for how we communicate with each other efficiently and make sure that the time that we're spending is spent efficiently and that our roles are clear with each other. So that has been something we've worked on to address our own efficiency. The second comment I would make is that from a legal standpoint, we are tuned in to risk and make sure that as we are focusing our comments, we're alert to where there is risk of claim. And the biggest issue, I would say, ultimately in any permitting regulatory program is, are you applying your rules consistently to all the parties? When you want to bring a challenge to a permit decision, normally where the challenger will go is to ask for a whole basket full of other similar permits and look and see, has everyone had the rules applied in the same way? So ultimately, you can get excessive with preoccupation to those details. We try to be very efficient with that work. And the last comment I would make is that the pre-meeting is the setting where the district can have the most impact at the least expense to the applicant. And so the more that we structure this upfront examination, it's where the applicant is not necessarily overcommitted and invested in assumptions that are inconsistent with our rule requirements. So as the engineers pointed out, getting that discussion going early is going to be the most cost-effective approach for everyone concerned.
And let me ask you this, are they made aware, we can't mandate that they come to the pre-meeting, but how much are they aware that it may make a difference in how they proceed?
Yeah, President Priner, I do find, we get a lot of applications from, the same engineers. There's generally a pool that we do see applications from. And I think that does have a benefit. They acknowledge that, yes, there is this pre-application meeting that they can do. And I do think we have a lot of them in our current practice. And we do encourage it if someone reaches out with a question of, hey, I'm trying to submit an application, I have these questions, let's meet about it, let's talk about it, and then kind of go over any of the rules that you might be triggered, what you might be missing, and those sorts of things.
Okay, Manager Waller?
Madam President, thank you. So for about first 10 years I was on this board, there wasn't a lot of building going on. We had a real slow time. Most of it was government. The permits that came in, the 2 or 3 a meeting or such were government, and of course we can't charge for government permits. So now that in the last couple of years that there's been a boom and we're seeing just massive large housing projects going in, I think this is timely to review our fee structure and to have that discussion about public versus private benefit issues in here and how that balances. And from what I see in this technical memorandum, I think that those topics are going to be covered from what I've heard, the concerns of my colleagues. And so with that, Madam President, I'll make the motion if we're, or we,
think
or
we had a
call the
motion.
vote. We have to call the vote.
Yeah, we have to call the vote. Manager Wagman?
Yeah, yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynan? Yes. Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
And the next one is drainage petition, Peoples Lateral. Ashley?
Good morning, Madam President, Board of Managers. Let me get to the right page here. Before you this morning for your consideration is Resolution 2021-18, starting on page 82 for the resolution with the memo on page 72. This is the next step in the public drainage petition process started by the Anoka County Highway Department, which proposes abandoning the headwaters of ACD 5362 Branch 2 Peebles Lateral to accommodate stormwater ponding to meet requirements for the expansion of the street project. The proposed resolution accepts the engineer's report and recommends setting a date for October 13th at your next regular board meeting to hold the public hearing for the petition.
Okay, everybody has their page. Let's go with a motion and we'll have discussion.
Madam President, I'll move that we accept Resolution 2021-18, Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers Drainage Authority for Anoka County Ditch 5362, findings and order, accepting engineer's review report, and setting a hearing date.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion.
Madam President, let me go back to the permit we just approved. That's also on lateral 2, is that correct?
Different branch, branch 5, lateral 2.
Oh,
So this is on the just branch 2 Peebles lateral.
okay, I think that,
Yep, so this one's up further north.
okay.
Okay, we have a motion second. Further discussion. If not, we'll call for the vote. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynan?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, Ashley, go ahead.
All right, next item up we have is Resolution 2021-19 for the final order to direct the repair of ACD 5362 main trunk and implement water management district charges. The memo is on page 85 and the resolution is on page 87. Included with this is also the task order 2021-014 from Houston Engineering, which outlines the costs and timeline to continue moving the project forward and getting it up and running and then completed. It's a recommended budget of $115,000, and that includes plan, inspect, design, the bid process, construction management process, closeout, as well as additional meetings with landowners and city staff.
Okay. Need a motion?
Madam President, as I understand it, the first thing we're dealing with is Resolution 2021-19. I move that resolution, which is the Rice Creek Watershed District final findings and order directing the repair of the main channel of Anoka County Ditch 53-62 and implementing water management district charges. The order requires the Board of Managers orders implementation of the repair of the main channel ACD 5362 consistent with the engineer's recommended repair contained in the technical memorandum as amended dated May 11, 2021 and consistent with the capital improvement program contained in the district watershed management plan. B, the Board of Managers orders the allocation of costs for the repair of the main channel of ACD 5362 in a manner consistent with staff's recommendation as contained in technical memorandum dated June 2, 2021. C, the portion of repair costs related to repairing and constructing the City of Circle Pines stormwater outfalls will be allocated to the city. Staff is directed to initiate coordination with the city to determine whether the work will be performed and paid for by the city under its own contract, or whether work will be incorporated into the bid and the contract for repair paid for as part of the project and reimbursed from the city as in addition to its water management district charges. D, the Board of Managers approves imposition of water management district charges for the repair of the main channel ACD 5362 as defined in the Watershed Management Plan and is outlined in the technical memorandum dated June 2, 2021. Copy of the charges, breakdown by the parcels, is attached to the resolution. Board of Managers directs its administrator to coordinate and take all subsequent actions necessary for implementation of the repair in a manner consistent and compliant with existing law. The board reserves to itself, however, all subsequent actions required by law to proceed under the board approval. Finally, after the Board of Managers further authorizes expenditures for the repair of the main channel of ACD 5362 and the collection of revenues consistent with this order.
I'll second that.
Okay.
That?
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion or questions? Further discussion?
So again, Madam Chair, I have some clarifying questions.
Go ahead.
So, as we look at these charges for the Water Management District, the permit that we just approved, once they start building, those buildings will be added to these charges? Because this is all within the same ditch system. So currently, they're not listed on here, but once those buildings are built and construction begins, then that property owner gets charged?
Madam President?
Go ahead.
So those all parcels that drain into the system, unless they have an exemption, will be charged for the water management district charge per our schedule that we have in here as current land use charges.
Okay.
But then we also have a future land use charge that is applied to properties that develop into a greater land use or a more intensive land use. And so that permit that we had here would be subject to a future land use charge that gets applied once that development occurs here. Again, we're in a period right now where we have two things kind of concurrently happening at the same time. Normally you'd have the charge already set up, and then when the development occurs as part of our permitting process, we would be coming back to collect at that time on that parcel. In this case, they're happening concurrently, so we're going to have to make sure that we either collect on that with the permit issuance that we have here, which I think is what we'd probably do here. Yeah, that would be what we'd do, is with the permit issuance, we would collect that future land use charge on those parcels. Yeah.
Okay, so if I look through this list, KE Corporation is listed here somewhere as.
Yeah, they would have a current
and then-
land use
And then it will increase.
charge, yeah.
Okay. And then a comment, which I don't know, maybe I'll make that after we vote.
Okay.
So, okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the vote. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wyden?
Yes,
Manager Bradley?
Yes,
Manager Wageman?
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, go ahead if you like.
thank you. So this ditch hearing, which was held 2 weeks ago, I was very impressed by the time that District Engineer Otterness and John Kolb conducted themselves during the meeting. The presentation was excellent, and the answers to the public were well thought out and delivered. I also want to say that following the meeting, I observed Ashley and Chris taking time with those individual landowners to answer their questions and to reduce their anxiety about what was going to happen. So compliments to all three of you for representing the Rice Creek Watershed District in such a terrific way at that meeting. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Kolb just got on, so he
Oh,
has
hey,
perfect timing. No, he's been here for that. Thank you, John, also. Okay, anything else on that? Then we'll move on to our budget, I believe.
President Priner, Chris, there's a task order associated with, so we need a second motion. Task order is found on page 164. And the proposed motion would be on page 86 of the packet. So you've just ordered the project, and we want to be clear with Houston Engineering as to the tasks that we're asking them to do. Again, the motion is on page 86 at the top of the
86,
page.
Madam President,
Go
I'll
ahead.
move the task order number 2021-014 for Houston Engineering.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Madam President? I just want to note one thing from our task order. If you look on page 166, under the area discussing schedule and compensation, we noted an estimated cost of services at $100,000 for the work in our budget. But that's, as always with a construction project, it's an estimate. It depends on what happens during the project, any unforeseen conditions that are found on site, the level of attention that the contractor may need or their schedule in that. And so we typically recommend that the district budget additional dollars within the contract to be able to handle some of these unforeseen conditions. So in here, we recommended that the board budget an additional 15% or $15,000 and authorize the district administrator to execute the contract amendments up to that amount. So I don't know if that would be something that you would want to have as an amendment to your motion to denote that.
Do we need it?
President Priner,
Go ahead.
I would think in that it's written into the task order, and by proposing the motion, the manager proposing it, we'll just say that you've recognized it after Mr. Otterness pointed it out. I don't think it requires,
To be added.
no, but it's good clarity in the record, so you're aware.
All right, so now we're back to the motion.
I think it's a roll call.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. I went backwards on this. Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynant.
Yes.
Manager Bradley.
Yes,
Manager Wageman.
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, next thing is the levy.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, on page 171 of your packet, starts the item. On page 172 is the resolution by which you adopt the 2022 budget and certify the tax levy to the counties of the district. This budget is identical to the one we discussed at the public hearing and is ready for your consideration.
Madam President, I move to adopt move to approve the resolution to adopt the 2022 budget and direct certification of 2022 tax levy with the following resolutions. That the Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers adopts the 2022 general fund and planned implementation budget totaling $8,195,045. Be it further resolved that a levy of 0.048% of taxable market value not to exceed $250,000 be certified to the counties of Anoka, Ramsey, Hennepin, and Washington, and levied upon all taxable property in the Rice Creek Watershed District for the year 2022 for the purpose of paying the general fund expenses of the district as provided by Minnesota Statute Section 103D.905, subsection 3. And finally, resolving that a levy of $5,208,494 be certified to the counties of Anoka, Ramsey, Hennepin, and Washington, and levied upon all taxable property in the Rice Creek Watershed District for the year 2022, as authorized by the Metropolitan Surface Water Management Act, Minnesota Statutes, Section 103B.241, for the purpose of paying the costs of preparing and implementing a watershed management plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Madam President, at the public hearing, it was presented that there was a 0.9% levy increase in the general levy, but that there would be a 6.4% rise in the taxable market value that would result in actual decrease of taxes. And because of that 6.9 or 6.4 rise in the marketable value, I don't think there's a need to increase that 0.9% in the levy. So for that purpose, I will vote against this resolution this morning.
Okay. Any further comments?
Let me ask if I'm correct, that the increase in the value of property in the taxing area affects the burden on the individual properties, but doesn't affect the amount of money we get. We are not going to get an extra 6%. We're only going to get 0.9%, less than 1%. And that without a budget that authorizes that, we will actually not have funds to do the things we've budgeted.
That we budgeted for. That's correct. Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, we call for a vote. Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
Yes.
Manager Waller?
No.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Well, everybody wants more things done, but nobody wants to pay for it. So, I mean, the only way for us, because we don't borrow, is to have an accurate budget as we can.
Well, that's true, Madam President, but a few years ago, we raised the budget to meet the amount of money because we had a budget that was less than what the taxable income was coming in. And I remember the point that was made that we were leaving, quote, dollars on the table. So, so the budget was raised to meet that area, and that's fine. But since we have such tremendous growth here, we're having more people pay in every year. We have more taxable property contributors, and so there's more money available, even though without having to necessarily raise the tax rate, because you have more people that are paying. So.
Yeah, and we have more projects that everybody wants done, so there is no way other to accommodate. Anyway, we'll go to the next. Beth?
Good morning.
Hey.
President Priner, Board of Managers, thank you for letting me be here today. I thank you for the additional direction that you provided at yesterday's workshop, and I want to thank Louis, our attorney, for working with us so closely yesterday to kind of update the resolution document, the background document, So I think it better reflects your hopes and objectives in this process with MAUD. I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you some of the new, excuse me. Oh, darn. Hold on 2 seconds. I apologize for this. I apologize. I did an upgrade to the Zoom program yesterday and did not realize that this change was coming on board, and I'm having trouble sharing the documents. I'm going to ask District Administrator Tomchek if he was able to make the copies that we had discussed, and if people see some of that information.
Yes, President Preiner, Beth, each individual has received the updated documents, and I think what we'll do here is Teresa will use the overhead and we'll be able to project the document on the screen.
I appreciate that, and I apologize for the hiccup. I reviewed some of the changes but didn't understand that one. Manager Wagaman, I see your hand is up.
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, that's just because I forgot to take it down.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. President Preiner,
Right.
it
Sorry
appears
about
that, and Beth, we do not have that technology available to show it, but is that true, Teresa?
Well, we all have copies.
Yeah,
Okay, you're okay.
I do not have a copy and haven't seen it, but if I'm completely comfortable, if we can just give me a synopsis of the changes,
Sure. So what,
just a quick.
absolutely, and I apologize for this confusion. One of the things that Mr. Smith recommended was that we took Manager Bradley's language specific to the strikeout and addition of language for the open meetings law and put that as an attachment to the background information and the resolution. And
Okay.
that way it was given as recommended and sample language, but not necessarily intrinsic to the resolution itself, which gives the organization some wiggle room. Otherwise, we were able to update the language, pull this up, in the background to more clearly state, we hope, that to solve this would just amend Minnesota statute section 13D02, so that a member may participate up to 3 times per calendar year through interactive technology from a location that is not open and accessible to the public. And then that's where it cites the proposal for specific language guidance. And then stating that all the other requirements of the open meetings law would stay in place to assure public access and transparency. The other thing that was added was the language kind of specific to MAUD for their resolution. And this was based on the conversation yesterday. This is not a resolution for you as a board to approve. It is a sample resolution that we submit with the background information from MAUD to consider approving. And it just goes through the steps that we discussed yesterday. That we've got the open meetings law that generally provides governing bodies of watershed districts and other units of government may hold meetings and provide for participation by board members through the use of interactive technology when there is a pandemic or an emergency. It states that that during COVID, many public bodies, including our Watershed District Board, use that interactive technology to conduct their business, and found that there were a number of benefits to that outside of the pandemic, including reductions in travel cost and time to the public and organizations, and an increase in public engagement, decrease of barriers to public engagement. The next whereas is where the current statute allows for members to participate through interactive technology without the pandemic or emergency, but that requirement includes that you must participate in a public and publicly noticed place, with an exception of 3 times per calendar year for individuals in military deployment or with a medically documented personal health reason. The final whereas is even absent a declaration of pandemic or emergency, remote meeting participation through the use of this interactive technology has benefits to increasing or facilitating member participation while ensuring that the process is transparent and accessible to the public. And so now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts hereby supports changes to the open meetings law to provide greater flexibility in the use of interactive technology by allowing members to participate remotely in a non-public location for up to 3 times in a calendar year. So, Manager Wagaman, did that kind of...
That was excellent. Between what we talked about yesterday and your explanation right now, I'm completely comfortable.
Perfect, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. How about the rest of you? And again, my apologies for the sharing portion.
Madam President, Mr. Smith was kind enough at 9 o'clock last night while he's still working on this. Thank you for diligence to check with me to see that he had my intent, and he did. He came up with the idea, which is kind of splitting the baby, talking about generally on the discussion point, but attaching a specific red line to the legislation.
I like that.
I would note, Mr. Smith, I would not have added the last sentence that you added, but it's redundant, but it doesn't hurt anything. So kudos.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Go ahead.
Madam President, I just wanted to offer one more reflection as I worked on this and on reflecting also on your discussion. One thing that I think this electronic participation does is expand the potential for who can participate and serve on watershed boards. It's wonderful to have people that are able to devote the time in this kind of setting, but I think if you think about other people across the demographics of who has an interest in watershed matters, but who is able to serve in a forum like this as opposed to serving online when they may have children or other jobs. So I think that's one other benefit of this that's referenced in the increased equity and opportunity for potential leaders and participants that kind of underscores the value of this as well.
Okay.
So, Madam President, just my clarification, Manager Bradley, are you talking about this sentence that's underlined here before the
Correct.
page? Okay, that's all, it says starts thereafter, all right. Just curious as to that.
Okay. Yeah, motion?
Madam President, I would move that we approve the proposed 2021 MAUD resolution addressing increased flexibility in open meetings law to utilize interactive technology as provided in the memorandum and attached proposed legislative change.
I have a second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Madam President, I believe that this very adequately states a need that we've discussed and a plan to resolve that need. And that's an important part, and anytime you're proposing a change, it's not just to say there's a need for it, but to offer a solution, a concrete, specific solution here. And so I support the forwarding this on to the MAUD.
Okay. Then we'll call for the vote. Manager Waller?
Yes?
Manager Wynan?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wegman? Manager Wagaman?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and Manager Priner, yes. And so we'll move that on. I do
I will
have a
take that
comment.
information and submit it to MOD this week. Thank you all very much for working through that with us.
You're welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
I do have a question though, and I think we just saw an incident of it. When people are online and they can't get the materials that are passed out that day, do we hold up meetings because they haven't had time to read the information? Or do we move without it? I guess that's up for us to think about.
That's why we pay you the big bucks, President.
Well, I was just thinking, so then, you know, if I hadn't read it and I was sitting out there, and it might be something
That's
important.
true.
Go
Yep.
ahead.
President Preiner, I think we averted it this time.
Yeah, we did.
But notably, software is routinely updated, and then its interface with the hardware that we have on site poses some challenges. So ideally, we would have been able to share the red line version.
Oh, yeah.
And to share that with all the managers here. So those things may happen, but we do work to avoid them.
And Madam Chair, I'd just respond, even though the packets were sent out under whatever postal way we had it, I received both packets yesterday when I got home.
And I
So-
never received this.
Right, so
So
I
that's
am.
why I'm a little bit,
I am glad to see that they are available on the website. So if I haven't received anything by Friday, I go to the website and review the materials at that time. So it's truly amazing how many ways there are to get information out there. So to your point, I think
well,
the
only-
big chunk of it is
Yeah.
available, but in cases like today, however we can make that happen.
Well, it might be
Sure.
as much as reading it to somebody, I guess,
Right.
if that's out there. Okay, check register?
So technology, no
Madam
matter what
President?
stage, can fail.
Oh, yeah, as long as there's people involved.
Yeah, postal office is always.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated September 8th, 2021 in the amount of $122,548.62 prepared by Red Pat and Company.
Second.
Motion man seconded. Any further discussion? We'll call the vote. Manager Wakeman,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Waller,
Yes,
Manager Wynan,
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes, motion passes. Next thing for discussion is engineer update and timeline. Anything new? Chris?
Madam President, I don't have anything specific to address, but certainly can answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the board for the engineer today? Seeing none, we will go to the administrator update.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, I'll just note that the Solinsky permit was issued. This was the property that had the violation, et cetera. So the permit will memorialize the site conditions that exist today. And it also stated the recorded easement for public drainage and the buffer that are in place on the property. So they're well aware of it.
Okay,
No
very
other
good.
update.
congratulations.
Yes.
Very good.
Manager updates. Manager Wageman,
I have nothing.
Manager Bradley,
Nothing.
Manager Waller,
Madam President, you know, after thinking about yesterday's workshop and the conflict that's gone on with Birchwood, I thought to myself on the way home, and this morning, why don't we just extend that pipe right through the marsh? We do it all the time when we have a public water wetland up in the DNR area, and just extend the pipe. It would do solves a couple things in my mind. One, and I just throw this out, not for discussion today, just for the thought. One, it relieves Birchwood from the receiving water from other communities being treated in their community, which is what they have complained about since 1978. They were upset about that. Number two, it provides for the staff an opportunity to see if the marsh does improve, or if it's basically just the same problem it has because of the local flooding. It isolates and segregates that. And that's why I say that a pipe that is not perforated, solid, all of it goes right out to White Bear Lake, we're finished there. So, and I think that would solve that problem. And I'll just leave it at that. No more reply necessary. I'll let you folks
I just
ruminate over it.
I was just wondering whether or not the White Bear Lake Conservation Organization would replace the homeowners along Halls Marsh if we do that, but it's worth talking about.
But it's worth talking about, and I thought about that also. But I remember very clearly the staff explaining how the function of Privy Lake was working as the stormwater. And if you remember, Matt Koshin said yesterday, you have to drain it down so he can look at it. And then the staff is pretty adamant about that the water coming through the pipe really isn't a problem. And so that would, by piping it out, would support their point of view, and it eliminates the suspicion from the residents of Birchwood or the council. And it would also, I believe, help to lower the temperature of the situation.
Okay. Marcy?
2 items. One is Clean Water Council is having a tour of their projects that they funded in southern Minnesota. So this weekend I'm going to be going down to Pipestone, Rock, and Nobles County. And yes, there's a ditch or two that we can look at. So that'll be informative. And then also TCAP/Rice Creek Commons is now open for discussion, and Commissioner Fretham from Ramsey County has held some listening sessions around what to do next, and I've attended one of those. There's some interest, if Rice Creek Commons comes about, to have some water quality, water quality issues addressed, and some like rain gardens, et cetera, et cetera.
Water reuse.
You're right. So we could be involved with that, and our friend Paul Gardner wants to get a citizens group together to address those. So just, it's on the docket again, and I'm sure we'll need to be involved.
Okay.
That's it.
And as far as, I have really nothing new. I did attend the CAC last week, and I have to commend our CAC. They have good discussions, they have good outcomes. They don't all agree, which is good. And at the end of the
Yes,
day,
that's very good.
and at the end of the day, I think they're doing an excellent job, so. All right, anything else?
Hasn't that come a long way since we started?
Since we talked about
You bet.
Schuneman's Marsh for 10 years?
Yeah, you know.
Miles.
Wow, what a change that has come. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, the fact that we've just had to even limit the amount of persons that were applied for, we had more applicants, years ago. It's been a significant improvement.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? We'll call for the vote. Manager Wagman?
Yes?
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes, and we're done. I gotta find my gavel that I tossed.